Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today's first story revolves around the question of how many Sherlock Holmes can we have? Right now we have Robert Downey Jr. on the big screen for Guy Ritchie, and then even better though, I think the primary Sherlock Holmes of the moment is Benedict Cumberbatch on the BBC. He's currently filming the third season. It's hotly anticipated, especially after the cliffhanger ending of season 2, and it really has rocketed Benedict Cumberbatch to international stardom, which we're beginning to see him capitalize on in films like Star Trek Into Darkness, but also The Fifth Estate, which is coming out in October and is a major Oscar contender. Well, this week the Toronto Film Festival is kicking off, and one of the first stories to come out of it is that Benedict Cumberbatch's Fifth Estate director Bill Condon is going to make his own Sherlock Holmes movie, and it's going to feature an older Sherlock Holmes retired, and it's going to star Ian McKellen, who worked with Bill Condon previously on Gods and Monsters. Quite famously, actually, it was a highlight for both of their careers. And it's based on a novel called A Slight Trick of the Mind. And it kind of has Sherlock Holmes revisiting an old case and kind of being thrust back into the game. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think that if you're going to have an older Sherlock Holmes, I think Ian McKellen is a brilliant choice. I think that I would be hard-pressed for me not to see such a film. And it reminds me a little bit of, almost just being so perfectly British, like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which ultimately, if you remember, we did actually quite a controversial crew review for that when it came out because none of us enjoyed it. We actually quite disliked it. But a lot of, particularly moviegoers in the UK really liked the film. So I think that Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy was, really British, very much meant to appeal to that audience, and did, but had a lot of problems, I think, transitioning outside of the UK, because I know that a number of people disliked it. It's a very divisive film, almost like Star Trek Into Darkness. But I wonder about the question of, I wonder how Benedict Cumberbatch must feel. He's like, was he like, what the hell, Bill Condon? We're supposed to be pals working together here on the Fifth Estate, and you're going to go challenge my Sherlock Holmes-ness? And I wonder if, multiple Sherlock Holmes can coexist, especially on such a quality level. I think the reason that Robert Downey Jr. can coexist with Benedict Cumberbatch is because the quality and the voice is just so different. Robert Downey's is like a blockbuster, tongue-in-cheek Sherlock Holmes that is really just Sherlock Holmes, I think, to some degree in name only, even though I think the first film I liked the music, even though I thought the mystery was conveniently solvable all in one room. And that was my biggest complaint about the first Sherlock Holmes. I couldn't go along and solve the mystery or even look back and be like, oh yeah, that's right, which I think is one of the best aspects of a Sherlock Holmes mystery. But instead, I just had to take Robert Downey Jr.'s word for it as the character. And he was like, oh, see? And I was like, okay, I guess so. I'm just going along for the ride here, I guess. But clearly Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock is just a work of genius. And I talk about it here a number of times. Everybody talks about it, I think, a lot in media. So if you still haven't watched it, do yourself a favor and get on that boat. It's fantastic. It's really, really good show. But I would watch a Sherlock Holmes with Ian McKellen. I don't think I could resist it, but I kind of, I feel like my allegiance is to Benedict Cumberbatch, and I feel slightly like I'm betraying him. And I feel Bill Condon's betraying him a little bit too, unless Bill Condon wins him an Oscar nomination or an Oscar, and then I think Bill Condon can do whatever he wants, and Benedict Cumberbatch will still love him. So that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day is that, this is a little bit of a television story, but I think it plays into film, so I wanted to discuss it. And that's that it was announced that for Arrow, the next season, they are going to have not only a Flash, they're not only going to cast Barry Allen, but they're going to bring in Amanda Waller. And so just like we had the dual Sherlock Holmes, are we going to have dual Amanda Wallers? Because as we all know, Angela Bassett played the character in Green Lantern. Now, if DC and Warner Brothers want to wipe Green Lantern from continuity, that's okay with me. I think it would be okay with a lot of people. No disrespect to Angela Bassett. She's a very talented actress, but I think that they redefined Amanda Waller for the New 52, and I think that Green Lantern was not a great film. And I don't really think as I recall, I don't think Angela Bassett really did anything particularly unique or interesting with the role. So she did a serviceable, nice, respectable job. But I don't think anyone's going to be like, we can't lose that character. But I wonder, as I've discussed before, as the comic book universes are so big, and both Warner Brothers and Disney try to, have their cake and eat it too by having movies and television shows based on these properties. Where is the line? How do you divide them? Are they divided? Or are you going to have movie and TV crossovers? Or if you need to have a character show up on television and movies, are you going to cast two different actors? Because I think Amanda Waller is pretty crucial to the DC universe, especially in the New 52, where she is the person who ends up becoming the Justice League liaison to the government. So how can she not be in an eventual Justice League movie, which I think she should be? She's one of the few characters who I think has benefited from the New 52. So I almost feel like I feel kind of bad that she's getting relegated to television. I feel she's a feature film-worthy character. And also, how do you have a Flash on television, as we've discussed here before on Beyond the Trailer? I just don't see, how you can have a Justice League movie if there's a Barry Allen running around on Arrow. But I know that Arrow has its fans. It doesn't have a huge fan base, but it has a very loyal fan base. So I'm just wondering how you guys feel about this. Where do you think the line should be? Should there be a television and a movie version of characters? Do you think that characters can go back and forth, or does the Warner Brothers and Disney have to choose where they want to put them? And what do you think of Amanda Waller? Do you agree with me? Do you think she's feature-worthy, or do you think television is a good place for her? All right, so that's the first two stories. The third story of the day is Derek Cianfrance. It was announced that he's getting his first studio picture. He's made a couple of films so far, most notably Blue Valentine and A Place Beyond the Pines, both with Ryan Gosling, and he wrote those films himself. Wrote and directed them. They're really his own independent projects. But finally, he's been picked up to adapt this novel, and it's called The Light Between Oceans. And it's very Derek Cianfrance. I think he's excellent. He's an excellent choice for this. It's about a couple who find a baby in a boat with a dead body, and they decide to raise the baby as their own, and it becomes like a morality tale, and I would suspect maybe a thriller. I don't know. I mean, when I hear dead body, I'm like, thriller? And I think if it's not a thriller, I think people would be disappointed. It sounds a little Nicholas Sparks-like, but that's why I think Derek Cianfrance is a great choice as director, because I think he'll pull it away from that and maybe underline, the more dramatic themes such as morality and, maybe the thriller aspects of it. He did an excellent, A Place Beyond the Pines, people are divided on that as well. I thought that it was very good overall. I really did enjoy it, and I think he did a great job with the action sequences in there and with Ryan Gosling. Maybe Ryan Gosling will be in this movie, but I don't know. I think maybe they should separate at this point. But I really like, so I think this is great. Derek Cianfrance, it's his first studio picture, and all the time, a lot of you guys are asking me about advice for breaking into the film industry as a director and a writer. And I think here's an excellent example of someone who's worked very hard, made his own movies, and now is finally getting, the call to the major league. I guess you could say he was working in the minors before. That's almost, what like starter out indies are. They're like the minor leagues, and then you get called up to the majors. So he's going to have a bigger budget. He'll have a bigger ad campaign behind him for Oscars. I mean, obviously there couldn't be a bigger one than there was for Blue Valentine, and as a result, it did quite well with nominations. But I just feel that this is a great opportunity for Derek Cianfrance. It couldn't have happened to a nicer director. I've had the opportunity to interview him. He's very nice, very thoughtful, really respects his work and the industry. And I think it's really nice to see someone like that, doing what they're supposed to do and getting rewarded. So it's just an excellent example of a person making that transition. And I think in comparison, keep an eye on Robert Stromberg, who's also making a transition from production designer to director, and he's always worked in big studio features. So everyone has a different path. Don't feel I must be the next Derek Cianfrance or I must be the next Robert Stromberg. Be you, but just keep an eye on the different paths to getting to work to direct pictures for studios. All right, so the question of the day comes from your mom is clock-like. I hope that's not a mom joke that you just made me say, but okay, but that's the username. And it says, Grace, you talk a lot about world building in your videos and how many newer films do go about this poorly. Which films, new or old, would you say have the best world building? And it's true. I have mentioned this a lot, specifically with Hunger Games. I feel its world building is quite sloppy, but I do feel it looks like they're fixing that for the second film with their new creative team, which is exciting. But world building, I feel bad world building is when you just kind of assume that everyone's going to just pick up on it, and you just do sloppy references to it, and you just assume that people will fill in the blanks themselves. And also, you have cheap sets that don't seem to have like a lot of depth, and it seems like not a lot of thought's been put into it, or it's almost childlike, the thought that's been put into it. Although, as I often say, that's insult to children. When I was a child, my sister and I did some excellent world building. I mean, we took all day to set up our toys sometimes, and our parents were very nice and let us keep them up overnight so that we wouldn't have to just clean them up as soon as we were ready to play. So, I mean, world building has been important to me since the beginning. All right, so movies that do a good job with world building. I think Star Wars was excellent. The Fifth Element is an excellent example of a film that did wonderful world building, but didn't need multiple movies to do it. It references it just in the first one. Blade Runner, another single film, really good. Alien's a really good example because they had a very clever idea of making, truckers in space. That's what they said they wanted to do. And they succeeded in that, and it created, and they had the company name everywhere, and it just created this, and I think that was clever because the audience could take everything they associate with trucking and space travel and kind of that helps fill in the blanks. So kind of, I think when you're doing world building, it always helps to have like a correlation to something modern. Like this is this world's version of X. This is this world's version of Y. So the audience already knows a little bit about X and Y, and so they can focus on how it's been evolved for this world. The Incredibles, also an excellent example of world building. Brad Bird did a great job setting up like this past superhero world. Edna Mode was a really great example of that. She was able to fill in so much of that world just in those clever scenes. And also I thought recently Elysium did a very good job with world building. And so basically world building, think of it almost like when you go on a ride at a theme park. They create, a lot of thought and attention and detail is put into like the labels on things, like for instance, at Comic-Con, I don't know if Edge of Tomorrow does a good job with world building, but when we saw the suits at Comic-Con, you could see that they went through a lot of effort to think through each part on the suit, to put on the barcodes, the way the latch is closed. That's all very important, thinking this through the mechanics of that. So that's why your production designer becomes very important. Someone has to think of all that stuff. So basically what you want is when someone's watching your movie, they can see something and go, oh, I wonder what the story behind that is. And they can imagine a world beyond what they're watching. It doesn't seem like almost like cardboard cutouts, like paper dolls. I guess that's the difference. It's like paper dolls versus a real set. You don't want someone to feel like someone just painted a background and was like, oh, look, that's the Capitol. And, never show Capitol life. Never show how Capitol things work for the Hunger Games. Everything just seems very small, and I think but as I said, I think they're fixing that in the sequel. So that's my best answer for that question off the cuff. I hope it's helped explain that a little bit. And write down below, anyone, what your thoughts are on world building and any film that you think did a particularly good job with it, or bad job. So that's today's morning movie news. Thanks for tuning in. Write your thoughts down below about today's top stories, and also anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, or any questions you might have. Bye.